Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live presentation titled OPC to Excel. My name is Randy, and I am the presenter today. If I don't get your question during the slide presentation itself, I will answer it at the very end. I will also send an email responding to each individual question. So let's get going. Again, we're doing OPC to Excel. In this webinar, we'll talk about the problem we're trying to solve, the solution itself, so in other words, how we go about solving this, and then I'll show you an Excel connection where we will read and write real-time data. So we'll read real-time data, and we will also write real-time data. And I will also show you VBA and UDF, user-defined functions. So you'll actually see some source code with a sample Excel spreadsheet, and you will actually be able to get this spreadsheet, and it comes, you'll be able to get it and do this yourself. And I'll show you how you can create reports from historical data. So you'll see how exactly to do this. At the very end, I'll show you how to get all these VBA capabilities, how to get the Excel spreadsheet, and how to get the webinar recording. So let's get going. What we're talking about again is how to get real-time data from a controller like a PLC or a DCS or an RTU into Excel. Excel just happens to be the most popular data analysis tool in automation, and mostly because it's very, very well used and understood by most of the people in our industry. And it's quite easy to create calculations and reports. People are able to do these calculations and reports pretty easily. So Excel is becoming more and more and more popular. It is very popular. Now the trick is, how do we get real-time data from a controller like a PLC or DCS, for example, into Excel? So that's what this particular presentation is about. And of course, we've got a couple of controllers. Again, don't worry about the brands. It's not about the brands here, but rather we're sending data from a control system into Excel. Now we have OPC servers here. So the vendors typically have these OPC servers for you. And we're going to have OPC Expert in the middle, which you see right here. And it will send data to Excel, and I'll show you how that's done. One more thing, all the software we're going to be using today is in demo mode, meaning I'll show you Excel, it's in demo mode. So everything I'm going to show you here is something you can download from the internet today and get this stuff working. So we'll create a PLC, we'll basically simulate it, and I'll show you how to create the reports in Excel. So we'll show the OPC connection, real-time data, and history. Now, some of the key features that you really need to be aware of are these. Number one, for Excel support, you get 32-bit and 64-bit releases. So anything from Excel 2003 all the way to Excel 2021, meaning we're talking about Office 365. Now, as far as Windows support, you get Windows XP all the way to Windows 11 if you're using Workstation, and if you're using Windows Server, it works on 2003 all the way to Windows 2022. So Windows 10 is obviously there, so is Windows 7, so is Windows 2019, and so on. So they're all in there. Every single version of Windows is supported. As far as communication, there's support for OPC UA, so both real-time with OPC with DA and historical access, HA, so UA DA and UA HA, OPC Classic as well, that's DCOM, with DA and historical data access, HDA. You can access both local and remote OPC servers. So the OPC server does not have to be on the same PC as Excel. It can actually be on a remote computer, not just local. And this works with DCOM, TCP/IP, works with web traffic, HTTP and HTTPS, but also MQTT. And MQTT is what we talked about in the previous webinar. If it's interesting to you, just take a look at the previous webinar. We have a recording on the website. Now, all of this, of course, can work as a Windows service. So really, really easy to do, and I'll show you how to do that. All right. The other thing that you need to be aware of is this. You can do synchronous and asynchronous reading and writing. And that is really to help you out. So by default, all communication is asynchronous. So asynchronous reading, meaning it's report by exception or on data change. This is OPC subscriptions. That's what's handled here, which is really necessary to get the best performance. So Microsoft recommends using the RTD, real-time data function, within Excel. And this is how we work with Excel, with report by exception, which means you can have thousands of points without really impacting any performance in Excel. And so there's no need to wait in your source code. If you're doing a reading, if you're doing a read or you're doing a write, you don't have to wait. You can just send the command, and whenever it's done, it will be done asynchronous, and you'll get the reply back. Now, if you want synchronous, you can do that as well. So it's optional, and you can use that in your VBA or your user-defined functions, your UDF. And the reason you might want that is because sometimes it makes updates easier to code. In other words, you write, you wait until the write completes, and then you go on with your code. So now you know that the write actually succeeded or failed. So the code proceeds only when that write or read is actually complete. And again, sometimes it makes it easier to code. But I will show you how you can do this without coding at all. So this is what we're going to see here. So again, the structure, I shouldn't say again here because I'm talking about the structure for OPC Expert. So here we're talking about OPC Expert. So this is, everything you're seeing here is within OPC Expert. So these are not separate executables. This is all within OPC Expert. It begins with OPC Classic, OPC DA client and a UA client that goes into an intelligent engine, and then it goes out to Excel via the RTD functionality. So again, all of this is within OPC Expert. So you can get data inside it by OPC DA or UA. Now, once it's in here, you can send it out to, for example, Excel files. This is for real-time data. This is for Excel files. You can store it in Excel files. Or if you want, you can send it out to a database, an external database. So be it SQL like Microsoft SQL or MySQL or SQLite. Really, whatever you want there, or you can send it to Azure or Amazon or an MQTT database, or you can send it to CSV files. Now, the next webinar we are going to do will actually talk about this particular portion. So we'll talk about OPC to an archive. So this is what we're going to focus on in the next webinar. Although in this webinar, I'll just show you a quick little CSV. Okay. Now, what the other stuff that OPC Expert has is you can bring data in using other mechanisms. I'm just going to point out this MQTT subscribers. You can see you can get data inside it with MQTT, which is what we talked about in the previous webinar. And to get the data out, of course, there's a DA server in there, there's a UA server, but there's also an MQTT publisher and also an MQTT broker. So all of this is right inside OPC Expert. Keep in mind, you can get MQTT, you can subscribe to MQTT and then bring it out to the RTD. So you can get MQTT to Excel quite easily. But again, in this particular webinar, we're going to be talking about this, just OPC DA and UA. We're going to connect to an OPC DA server and a UA server, and we'll send the data out to Excel. Okay, so let's go have a look at this. And once again, we've got the controllers through OPC to OPC Expert. So this is an OPC server to OPC Expert and to Excel. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you here. So let's get going here. And there's my computer. Now, just before I begin, I want to show you. So we'll open the file location. So here we are, and you can see when you download OPC Expert, you really just get an executable. You have a couple of other files in there that make it a little bit easier for you to set up, but that's all you do. There's just an executable that you copy. What that means is that if you want to uninstall OPC Expert, there is no uninstall. You just delete all the files. So to start up OPC Expert, when you run it, it will extract all the files. There it goes. So you can see that it extracted all the files right here. And they're all on disk, and there is OPC Expert running. And again, if you don't want OPC Expert anymore, you can remove any of your tracks by deleting everything in this folder. That's all there is to it. We're going to get back to this. We're going to get back to this a little bit later. So here, I'm going to go to Tools, Options. So when you start out with Excel, first thing you want to do is go to Tools, Options. And I should point out, make sure you've got at least version 9.4.2304.11. Make sure it is at least this version. If you have a version that's earlier than that, just download the latest. It's free to download. Just get the latest here. All right. So here, the very first thing you want to do is to enable Excel features, just like this. You can even set your separator or your decimal character. So there we go. So we enable Excel features. The other thing I'm going to do, and you don't have to do this, this is just for this particular webinar, I will set up OPC Expert Simulation Server. There's a simulation UA server that's included with OPC UA. You can take a look. There are other stuff here. But we're just going to set up the simulation. By the way, if you want to set this stuff up as a service, just click the service button, and then everything will run as a Windows service. So we'll click OK. So there we go. And what you can see here is that we're automatically browsing. So you can see we've got several servers here. We have 3 OPCDA servers. They're in the blue. So we've got Kepware, Sartorius. We got Simulator here. We also have 3 UA servers. So these 3 right here, which makes it very, very nice to experiment with. I mean, OPC Expert has a client to connect to DA and UA if you haven't done it yet. Okay, so I will first connect to a UA server. So here we go. I'm connecting to a UA server, and I'm subscribing to data, and it really is that easy to connect. There we go. And I will open up Simulator. So this is a DA server. And I'll just subscribe to a few items here. So there we go. So I'm subscribing to some items, as you can see. So now some items are coming from Kep server, and some are coming from Simulator. So point is, some are DA, some are UA, and we're getting data, as you can see, every second. Okay. So now I'm interested in putting this information here into Excel. So I'll double click Excel. I'm starting up Excel, and I'll open up a blank workbook. So there we go. Okay. So the first thing that I'll do is I'll take some data here, like this stuff, and then I'll drag it. And I'll drop it on Excel. Just drag and drop. That's all it is. And you can see we're automatically connecting. It's automatically connecting to the OPC server. It's attempting to subscribe to items, and we can already see data coming in. So nothing fancy. Data is coming in just like this. Oh, I should have actually put this guy in too, so I'll do that. So I'm adding another item. You can see you just drag and drop. There we go. I've got Randy here. I'm going to put, so here we're reading data. I'll write data as well. So what I'll do is I will say, OPC is terrific. So I'm going to put that, I want to put this right in here. And to do that, just go to the end here and I go comma, and in this case it's C2. So there it is, C2, and I hit enter on my keyboard, and I see OPC is terrific. And sure enough, you can see OPC is terrific right over here. So for example, if I say, something like this, you can see I wrote it, and there it is. So since we love hockey over here, I just wrote something. And again, you can see that while I'm doing this, I am reading all of these values. So again, what we're seeing is that we're reading real-time values, and we're also able to write real-time values. Okay, so now let me show you. We'll do some source code, and I'll show you. All of this I did, of course, without any source code at all. There was nothing. But now I want to show you a sheet that we have included with OPC Expert. So if we right-click OPC Expert and open file location, we saw this before. We saw this earlier. If you go to Expert Resources, in this particular folder right here, there's a file called PLC. There it is. And if I double click this guy, here comes Excel, and I'll enable the content. And what we see here is, in essence, a PLC. So let me just show you where this data is actually coming from. And this is why I installed earlier, I added this simulation server, because in here you can see there is my PLC, and I will subscribe to these items over here. So here I am, subscribed to them. Just put this down a little bit here so you can see, tell me a story, and we can see some data here. Now, look at this value here, flow. So I'm going to go in here, and what you can see is that the value is actually changing inside OPC Expert. So you can see it's changing right in here, and you can also see a little trend. And this trend is actually coming from Excel. Now, we provided this as a demo. And you can see if I take this little guy over here, you can see the values changing in OPC Expert over here, right? So you can see that I am changing the values. You can see the trend moving along. We can move this other one. All of this is using standard Excel functionality. There's nothing special that OPC brings in. The OPC Expert brings in, that is. It's just enabling Excel to get the real-time data. So here I am, and I'm making changes to the data itself. So as you can see, I've made some changes. And if I take these buttons, there we go. So I can see here true. I can close it, false, true, false. And you can see this one right here, Boolean 0, 1. This is going true and false. So I've got visualization using Excel. Now, who cares? Really, what difference does it make? Well, I'll show you how this was done, and you actually get this, and you also get the source code for it. And the source code is really important because it's very easy to do, and you can use it for your own application. So if I go to view code right here, here is the code, and this is just VBA. And you can see everything is commented, and you can see how we are able to read and write. For example, to write, there it is, OPCExpert.write value. That's the UDF, the user-defined function we provide you. You just say exactly what the item path is, what the server is, the item ID, and the value. There's really nothing to it. And if you follow the code, you'll understand exactly how this is done. So you can read and write with absolutely minimal work. It's really, most of the work here, most of the code is really just comments and making things pretty. That's all it is. But as you can see, there it is, write item. So if we go, for example, to write item, that's a function in here. Scroll bar, write item. This is the key. This is the key subroutine. And you can see that this is the key statement here, OPC expert dot write value. Right here, this is the key. So point is, you can do this yourself. You have the source code, and you can start to program with Excel on your own. It's actually really, really easy to do. And just so you know, you can also do this stuff using REST API. Okay, so let's, pardon me, let me stop this. Okay, so now I showed you what happens with Excel source code. I'm just going to get rid of these, of this particular subscription. Okay, so we can focus back. Now we'll do a report. But to do a report, we need some historical data because we want to do a report on some historical data. So I'll take this, right-click, archive, create new archive. Now, again, in the next webinar, we'll talk about SQL and how to send this stuff to MongoDB or MQTT or MySQL and so on. So Amazon, Azure, so lots of different ways. But in this case, I'm just going to send it to a very simple CSV that's in there. That's actually OPC Expert is going to create a database. So there it is. And I am archiving and I click start. So there you can see these guys are already archiving. These ones are just getting set up. It's just connecting. Boom, it connected. We see green check marks. Everything is good. And you can see we're actually getting data. So we're actually getting data right now. I'll just put this down so we have more room. And I'll go back to Excel. Now we saw how to get real-time data already. So in this case, what I'll do, again, there's the ribbon. So there's the Excel, there's an OPC menu option, and you see this Excel, this ribbon within Excel. So what you can see, for example, is if you click on status, it actually tells you what the status is for OPC Expert and what's going on. So it tells you everything is, looks like the UDF is working properly, everything's available, it gives you a little timer here. Okay, so we know everything's okay. I'm just going to select everything and I'll delete just so everything is clean. All right, so now we'll go to historian data. And again, OPC Expert includes a historian embedded right inside. And you can send the data to SQL if you want, or you can send it somewhere else. So I'll take these two items, for example. So these two right here, and you can send OPC UA or DA items, doesn't matter. And I drag and drop. You see it says drag and drop historical items from OPC Expert here. So there we go. So this can actually even be from another historian. So if you've got Pi, or you've got PhD, or you've got the quantum, or whatever historian from ABB that you have, go ahead and use those as your data source. In any case, so there we have our two items that we're asking for. I'm going to ask for only 1 minute of data. So I'll go for 1 minute. So I'll just ask for the last minute of data until now. So again, it's from 1 minute ago until now. Of course, I can say from Monday until Tuesday, or give me all the data for 2022. We'll get process data. Okay, everything else here is good. And I'll click OK. So here, what we're seeing is there is, we can see the history. So we can actually get the history. And you can see it's from this time until this time. So my time, it's 11:23 until 11:24. And that's my time. And you can see the data, which we can then take. And I can even trend. So we'll go in Excel. Well, select these items. There we go. And I will insert. Now keep in mind, this is an Excel trend. So there it is. There's a trend right here in Excel. And just like that. Now, one of the cool things is you can make this time relative, so you can see this is actually hard-coded. But what if I do this? I'll say that this is now. This is an Excel function called now. And now, over here, I'll go equals now minus 1 minute. To say 1 minute, Excel has time 0, 1. So 0 hours, 1 minute, and 0 seconds. And we'll say OK. And as you can see, immediately we got a new query. And you can see that this changed. And if I hit F9 to recalculate, boom, I'm recalculating. And if I hit it more, you can see this stuff here is actually, and I'm actually manually hitting F9 to recalculate. So, for example, if I change the spreadsheet at all, if I put in a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1, right? Anytime I make any change in Excel, it automatically recalculates. So you can see that happening. One of the cool things is, look at this, I can actually take a value. I'll just take any value here. And remember, this is real time, so it's going to change. Look at this. So because this value is going to change, see that? It's changing all the time. So I'm actually getting a real-time trend in Excel of the last minute of data. Pretty neat. How useful it is for you, don't know exactly. But if you want, but the point is that you can make these reports. You can make these reports in real time. I just deleted this, so it stopped updating. But that's a report in real time. So you can create these. You can say, for example, give me all the data from yesterday until today. Give me all the data from the last shift, from the last 8 hours, from the last month. And you can do these ad hoc reports. And it's really very, very easy to get your data now. So all of the data is available right in here. Okay, so what we've seen now is how we drag and drop real-time data. I showed you an Excel, a macro-enabled Excel spreadsheet. That's the XLSM. That's that PLC that I showed you. I showed you the UDF. And you can see how you can very easily begin to create reports. Okay, so let me close this. And when we go back to the questions later on, you guys can ask whatever questions you want. And Norbert, Mark, I see you've got some questions. I'll answer those as soon as we finish here. And I see questions about the ribbon. I'll explain that. Okay, so this kind of ends the formal part of the webinar. I'm just going to say a few more words for those of you that need to leave. But after this brief conclusion here, I'll go back to your questions and I'll provide questions, answers, and I'll show you exactly what's going on here. So to get automated troubleshooting, you can go and download OPC Rescue. It's a free download. Get your troubleshooting with OPC, opcrescue.com or opcexpert.com. So you can get OPC Expert from there. So you can do everything that I've shown you here. You can do it from there. You can download it and give this a try. With OPC Expert, you can trend, bridge. You can do all these different things here and more. And in this particular webinar, I showed you how to archive. So we did the archiving and I showed the Excel connectivity. Again, in the next webinar, we'll do a deep dive into this archive and I'll show you how that's done with SQL and Azure and so on. So you'll see that. But this you'll be able to do all of this stuff with Excel. With OPC Expert. And again, I want to point out that all of this you can download it for free and give it a try. Now, to get some hands-on learning, you can get your certified OPC professional designation. This is vendor neutral training, and it shows you how to configure OPC with DCOM, with OPC UA, how to do the certificates, how to put the security in. We show you how to do all of that in the classes. You troubleshoot OPC systems, you get it fixed, we break it, you have to fix it, then we break it again, and you got to fix it. You learn how to provide security properly, including firewalls, so I guess I'll begin with DCOM hardening from Microsoft, firewalls, specific user accounts, user access control, authentication, encryption. You'll see how to do all of that stuff, and you will learn OPC best practices. Now, you actually get two computers in there, so you configure both computers to make sure that there's OPC in between, and you also get to connect to other students in the class. So these classes are live. There are other students. You connect to other students. They create problems. You have to solve them, and so on. It goes back and forth. It's pretty cool. And of course, it is vendor neutral, which means we take OPC servers from various vendors. So we have a bunch of vendors. We use their OPC servers. We have a bunch of OPC clients as well from different vendors. And we see how these things behave. So it's completely vendor neutral. Really very important that it's vendor neutral. Now, the workshops themselves, if you take one of the online workshops, there is no travel, meaning you just sit at home or at work, and it's all online. These are live remote classes with a live instructor, and they're very, very interactive. For those of you that have been in them, you'll notice that they're very interactive. We also have public classes. So we've got public classes in person and online. We also have private training. So again, both in person and online. And you can look for dates at OPCTI.com. Now, one last slide before I get back to your questions that I see here. So you, by the way, you can follow this QR code if you want. We're going to send you an email with this webinar recording. You will also get a download for OPC Expert. So you'll see exactly where you can download it from. So you can download OPC Expert, and we'll give you a link, which is what this is. If you're doing this live, you can get this right now. So we've got a whole bunch of videos showing Excel examples of how to do exactly what I showed you. So we have both real-time and history. We've got Excel trends and reports. And this is where you can actually go to opc.com and OPC to Excel. You'll also get an invitation to our next webinar, which is covering OPC archiving. So again, very specifically archiving in OPC, where you can send this data over to SQL, so like Microsoft SQL or MySQL and so on, or on the web or whatever. You can actually get a historian, and we'll show you how exactly to do that. So you'll get an invitation. That webinar is on June 29th, so it's in a couple of months. We'll give everyone a break in May, then we come right back in June, and so you'll get that. All right, everyone. So this ends the formal part of the presentation, and now I will get to your questions. And I'll provide you some answers. So if anybody has any questions, now is the time to go write them down. Let me know, and I will do all these questions one at a time. All right, so let's begin here. I see first question, Norbert, in the ribbon. Aha. Okay, so their questions. In fact, Norbert and Mark, you're also asking about the ribbon. So let me show you that. So we'll go back here. So what they're talking about in OPC Expert is this. So you can see when I start up, there's an OPC tab here, and you can see the ribbon. And the question is, well, how did it get there? Well, that got there from OPC Expert, and I'll show you that. We'll go Tools, Options. So remember, we were in the simulation. We did this. So I'll go back to the General tab right here, and I will uncheck Enable Excel Features. So I'll uncheck that. Right. So this is the way actually OPC that you get OPC Expert. Of course, Excel features aren't enabled, and so when we go back to Excel, now you don't see an OPC menu option. So this actually came from OPC Expert. OPC Expert actually installs that for you. The Developer tab, this guy here, this is here, but that's from Excel. So once again, if I go to OPC Expert, I go Tools, Options, and this time I enable Excel features. And by the way, you can make your own, depending on what language you're using. You know, in some languages, for example, in English, the default separator is a comma. But if you're in Europe, the default separator is probably going to be a semicolon. So you can say, no, I actually want the semicolon to be a separator. And instead of a period for a decimal, maybe what you want is a comma. So you can actually change that over here. So again, I'll say OK. So once I say OK, when I start up OPC Expert again, not OPC Expert, but rather Excel. So here we go. And now you can see this OPC ribbon again. So there's that ribbon, and OPC Expert actually puts it in and takes it out. One of the first things you should really do actually when you're running this is just click OPC status right here, and this will check out immediately if everything is okay. So you can see it's telling you pretty quickly that the RTD is functioning properly, historical data functioning properly. If there's a problem, it will say that there is a problem, and it usually tells you what the problem is as well. Okay, and it also tells you, oh, look at this, I'm running 64-bit Excel. But this also works, of course, with 32-bit Excel. All right, Mark, I hope that answers your question, and Thomas as well. Bear with me. So, Mark, that was your question. Thomas, it is possible to get a download link with those practical files, especially the Excel. Oh, yeah. So, look, so Mark, Thomas, you're asking about the files. So, yeah, the file is right here. So if I go to the file I showed, if you go to OPC Expert and open File Location, and if I go to Expert Resources and I go down here, oh, let's go, there it is. plc.xlsm, and that's embedded right inside there. So it's inside, not that it's embedded, but it extracts, OPC Expert extracts this file. And if you have any problems, please just give us a shout and we will give you a hand. Okay. There we go. Okay. Lisa, questions about training. Okay, we'll send you an email on that. Noel. Oh, interesting question. Can you crash a control system you are connecting to? If so, how to be aware of it and prevent? So, can you crash the control system you're connecting to? Well, if your control system crashes because of OPC, you got a bigger problem. So what does it mean, crash? Number one, from an OPC perspective, nothing should happen if you connect to an OPC server, right? OPC and controllers are separated, so you better not, you shouldn't be crashing anything. And again, if you are crashing it, that's a serious problem. Modern OPC servers, nothing crashes. So maybe the better question is, could you crash an OPC server? Well, I have seen it. You connect an OPC server, and it crashes. And OPC servers just very simply should not crash. So there is a problem, either a problem with the client or a problem with the server. We specifically built OPC Expert and Excel to be very, very gentle in your systems. So nothing should happen. But again, I don't know what your OPC server is. So Noel, let me know what specific OPC server you're talking about. Oh, it looks like I answered your question. Okay. Cool. Terrific. Yeah, just in general. Okay, so I think I answered your question, but if I didn't, just let me know. Ben, are you running OPC Expert with admin rights when you turn that Excel option on or off? Very good. Ben, thank you for asking that. So the question is, are you running OPC Expert with administrator rights? Yes, you have to. If these are administrative functions, installing, uninstalling, these are administrative functions, and you have to do that. But you only do it once. So what that means is that the system administrator, for example, or whoever it is that has administrator rights, only runs it once. So Ben, if, for example, you are the administrator, you run it once, and then your users can actually use OPC Expert. They have that component available for them, and they do not need administrator rights. That's actually very important. But the first time, yeah, absolutely, you need administrator rights, but not afterwards. Ben, let me know if that answers your question. Mark, looks like I answered your question. Abdullah. Okay, so Abdullah, looks like you downloaded and you tried, but you need some help. So yeah, we will contact you and make sure that everything is working for you. All right, folks, I have time for a couple more questions, but go ahead and ask them. Let me, the next question here, Cahoon, what version of Excel and Windows? So let me just show you here. So here, by the way, I'm using Windows 10. But the versions, as I was saying earlier, so the versions are Excel 2003 all the way to 2021, right? So everything inside Office 365 and pretty old versions of Excel. Keep in mind, if you're using Excel 2003, there is no ribbon for you because the ribbon only started with 2007. So there is no ribbon, but still all the functions are actually available to you. Also, it's both 32-bit and 64-bit. So both of those are actually there. And Windows support is Windows XP all the way to Windows 11. So anything from Windows XP or 2003 and on. So they're all supported. Windows 2008, Windows 7. I'm just hitting on the popular ones, of course. Windows 10, Windows 11. All of them are supported, including the server version. So Windows 2019, 2016, 2022, Windows 2008, and so on. So all of those are supported both with OPC UA and DA. And don't forget, since you have MQTT here, you can actually connect. There are many, many controllers out there that support MQTT. So they have MQTT publishers. So you can connect to external brokers. OPC Expert already has a broker, so you can publish to it, and you can get MQTT data directly in Excel. Pretty cool stuff. Okay, last question, Donald. Where can we learn more about OPC training? Is that through an email follow-up? Yeah, no, we'll send you an email follow-up. But if you want to take a look at specifically OPC training and dates, you can take a look at it right there. We go. Yeah, right in here. So you can go to www.opcti.com, opctraininginstitute.com. That's our website, and you will have the dates in there. All right, folks, that looks like we are out of time. Again, you will get an email, so everyone will get an email with a link to this webinar recording. You will get a link to download OPC Expert. You'll get a link as well to an OPC case, to an OPC and Excel case study. In fact, I think we've got a couple on there. You can see how other people are using it, how you might want to use it. You'll see some Excel examples. You'll get real-time and history examples. You'll see how to create trends and reports. And if you want to follow this QR code, you can do it right now. Even if you're looking at a recording later on, you'll be able to follow this QR code to make it easy. And you will get an invitation to our next webinar, which is talking about OPC archiving. And that is next month at the end of June, where we talk about archiving real-time data to other databases so that you can get a historian on your own right here. So pretty neat stuff. Everyone, thanks again for coming. I hope you found this webinar valuable. Please come back to other webinars that we'll have in the future. And if you guys have any questions, go ahead and contact me anytime or give us a shout, and we will help you out with your OPC connections. Thanks again, everybody. Bye-bye.